anchor. You can support us with the Super Thanks button below.
The latest developments in the Russia-Ukraine war reveal that the war will intensify even more, contrary to the idea that it will end soon. While the Russian army is dealing with military personnel and ammunition problems, the images and reports published the other day were interpreted as the Ukrainian army started the spring offensive that it has been preparing for months, because the Ukrainian army has realized a first since the beginning of the war. The Ukrainian army crossed the Dnieper River and deployed on the banks of the river. Russia experienced a great panic in the face of this development, which happened for the first time in the war that has been going on for about a year and a half, because the Ukrainian army had started to advance on the Russian territory on the edge of the river. The army's goal was to reach Crimea, which was unjustly annexed in 2014. As a matter of fact, while all these events were taking place, explosions occurred in Crimea. NK Daily News Team reports the developments on the banks of the Dnieper River and the explosions in Crimea, which are important enough to affect the course of the war. We continue our work with the information we obtain directly from the field and with our expert team members, each of whom has adopted the understanding of accurate and impartial journalism. You can click the Super Thanks button below to support our teammates and our work. Let's examine all the developments together. With the withdrawal of the Russian occupiers from the Kherson region in the last months of 2022, the Dnieper River became the front line. This was a major step towards achieving Ukrainian leader Zelensky's ultimate goal. Zelensky's goal was to retake Crimea from the Russian occupiers. The occupation started with Crimea and will end with the retaking of Crimea, Zelensky said in many of his speeches, and his brief in victory was strengthened by the successive offensive of the Ukrainian army. So much so that the Ukrainian army is advancing towards Crimea with the latest developments. The Ukrainian army's spring offensive has been on the agenda for a long time. A careful analysis of the report recently published by the Institute of the Study of War, based on images obtained by the Russian authors, raised the question of whether the Ukrainian army had launched the spring offensive. Because the Ukrainian army deployed on the banks of the Dnieper River and advanced from Kherson across the Dnieper River near the town of Oleski and as far as Dachi. The footage, allegedly obtained from Russian authors, shows amphibious vehicles of the Ukrainian army landing on the eastern bank of the Dnieper River and building a bridge in this area. The Ukrainian army had destroyed bridges in this region in the last months of 2022 while trying to repel Russian invaders from Kherson. Explosions were heard in Crimea as the Ukrainian army advanced through Kherson towards Crimea. The Russian occupiers were shocked by this comprehensive attack by the Ukrainian army. Images of the explosions in Crimea was shared on social media. The explosions occurred in the city of Sevastopol on the Crimea Peninsula. Crimea, which Russia occupied in 2014, became a risky area for Russia with the war that started in 2022, because the goal of the Ukrainian army was to take Crimea from the occupiers. The Ukrainian army pushed back Russian troops in the occupied territories and advanced towards Crimea. When Russian leader Vladimir Putin began invading Ukraine, he hadn't thought about these days. However, sanctions imposed by Western and European countries, soldiers who did not want to take part in the occupation of Ukraine, and ammunition shortages made the Russian army fail. Ukraine continues to corner the Russian invaders with its ever-growing army. After the explosions in Sevastopol the other day, the occupying governor of the city, Mikhail Reskovoye, said in a statement, "An attempt was made to attack Sevastopol from 3:30 a.m. today." Reskovoye said that the explosions were caused by downed drones. He explained that the drones were shot down in a protected area outside the city and that there was no damage. But the accuracy of these statements is not yet known. As it is known, Russian authorities have been hiding their losses and making false statements since the beginning of the war. This is because Russia cannot accept the setback it is experiencing against Ukraine. There were many comments on social media about the statement of Reskovoye, the occupying governor of Sevastopol. Among these comments, there were many statements that Reskovoye's statements were not true. Indeed, many social media users stated that the explosion on the Crimean Peninsula caused damage to the city. At the same time, local news outlets also shared information that refuted the Russian official statements. One news channel wrote, "Consequences of explosions in Sevastopol. Windows were broken in some coastal houses, and advertising lighting was broken. The blast also opened balcony doors and windows in a new building." Developments along the Dnieper River and on the Crimean Peninsula show that the Russian army is exhausted. Before the Ukrainian army deployed on the banks of the Dnieper River, the Russian occupiers are said to have retreated from this area, because the occupiers have lost even the power to repel the attacks of the Ukrainian army. So much so that thousands of Russian soldiers left the front line, while tons of ammunition were destroyed as a result of the successful attacks of the Ukrainian army. The Russian army is forced to retreat from many regions due to its losses. Russian leader Vladimir Putin has taken a series of measures to solve the problems in the army, but without success. Putin's decision to mobilize was also ineffective. Because Russian youth now know that there is no point in fighting Ukraine, they do not want to die for Putin's political interest and personal career. Putin has not been able to solve the problem of soldiers to take part in the invasion of Ukraine, nor has he been able to solve the problem of ammunition in the army. Putin, who held talks with countries close to Russia, such as Belarus and China, could not achieve what he wanted as a result of these talks. The Ukrainian army, which is getting stronger day by day with the support of Western and European countries, inflicted heavy losses on the Russian army. The losses of the Russian army, which has a shortage of soldiers and ammunition since the beginning of the war, are as follows: 187,080 military personnel, 3,683 tanks, 7,139 armored combat vehicles, 2,849 artillery systems, 539 reactive spread fire systems, 289 air defense systems, 308 aircraft, 294 helicopters, 5,753 automotive and tank equipment, 18 military ships and boats, 911 cruise missiles, 2,413 unmanned aerial vehicles, 339 special machines, 4 operational tactile missile systems. The ever-increasing losses of the Russian army are causing many problems in Russia. Russian people are constantly protesting for the war to end, because almost all of them have lost friends and relatives in this war. In addition, the sanctions imposed by Western and European countries have negatively affected the Russian economy. Inflation is constantly increasing in Russia, because the sanctions do not stop. One wonders what Russian leader Vladimir Putin will do in the face of all of these problems. Putin's advancing age and illnesses are also effective in failing in his decisions. For this reason, people believe that Putin will not be able to improve the situation in Russia. Even if Putin gives up the invasion of Ukraine, it seems impossible for the people to forget what they have been through. This is why Putin is becoming more and more hated by almost the whole world, especially by his own country. How do you interpret the Ukrainian army's attack on the Dnieper River and the Crimean Peninsula? Do you think this could be the beginning of the long-awaited spring offensive? How will the Russian army compensate for its losses? What are your views on Putin's fate? We are curious about your views. Follow us for more updates.
All rights to these videos belong to Anka Daily News YouTube channel. Our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook usernames are @AnkaDailyNews. Do not rely on any other social media publications. We legally fight all websites and channels that use it without our permission.